So one can just, for a short while, so just sit down quietly as we have been discussing. And so then and then one can meditate on one of the meditation objects that we have been discussing. So one can I can also meditate on a white Om. What one can do is one can briefly scan through the body, visualizing that the body is becoming empty inside. And then meditate that in the upper half of one's head is a white Om. A luminous made up out of light, the embodiment of the manifestation of the enlightened Buddha consciousness. And for some time one can just gently try to unify the mind with this Om more and more. Thank you very much. So we could start with a question. If you, perhaps you found some question in your lunch, which you didn't eat. Yes?
I have a question about meditation, just being a beginner at meditating, and kind of trying to take into account the idea of not pushing it, but also trying to be aware of laziness or giving up too early. You know, if you gave the...
What was the... After laziness,
or maybe giving up too early, or seeing if there is some sort of barrier that you should try to push through initially, and then it'll be easier. I know you made the metaphor to going to the gym, and it's not like training out and working out in the gym, right? But I feel like what I was thinking is, even at the gym, you don't. I mean, if you lift up a weight twice and it gets hard and you stop, you're not going to get any better at it. And you said that it's not like that at all. But so I'm just wondering if when you're beginning, what are the barriers that you should try to work through? Because it's going to be a little hard at first or forever. But what is normal, and when do you figure out when to stop, or when to take a break, or when to just give it more time?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. Yeah, so I think that's individual. It's up to, it has to do with the individual circumstance. So of course, we do need. So for example, physical pushing at the meditation, we need, because it's difficult to sit. For most people, it's difficult at the beginning to sit in the 7-point posture, and so what comes to me always as a surprise is that people are surprised that it's difficult, and how ready then people are to give up when it is a little bit difficult. So I think with the physical pain, I guess there can be at the beginning, there could be quite a lot of physical pain, and that is something that we need to learn to deal with, so to accept, or whatever. So there maybe it is like in the gym, and so I always think, one is willing to take upon oneself physical pain when one is training one's body, or when one is going hiking. So all these things, they are not easy, and people, they don't give up immediately. So just because there is some muscle pain, then the person is not going to stop and say, oh, now I'm not going to go to Everest Base Camp. This is too hard. After the first muscle pain, then it's okay. Oh no, I can't do this. I have to sit down. Now somebody has to carry me back down because I cannot bear, this pain. But with the meditation, it's sort of like, oh, it's painful. It's like 5 minutes or 10 minutes, and one gets the impression, so the participants really hardly can bear it. And so there, I think, there it would be very useful to be more tough. So you have to be tough, definitely. Yeah. I think what I mean, especially at the beginning, and at the beginning everybody pushes. So that's at the beginning. There's a mixture, enthusiasm, self-discipline, but then ongoing. So ongoing. To have a continual practice, Yeah, so that won't work only with self-discipline. So there needs to be a personal experience of a benefit and well-being that we get out of it. And so it also has something to do with the length of the meditation session that we choose. So I don't know. So I don't know what people one meets. Very, very early on in Buddhism, I was in the Zen tradition. That's always, people always talk about, it always seems people talk about how long they have sat. So you always meet these people, they say, I'm sitting every day so long. How long? I'm sitting every day 1 hour. So one thing that I always think is, what is the secretary going to say? That's nothing, I'm sitting every day 8 hours. So there's a confusion with thinking that sitting in the 7-point posture is actual meditation. So of course at the beginning it's good to do it, and there's physical difficulty, and it's worthwhile to learn to deal with the physical difficulty, so not to give up immediately. I mean, personally, I would sort of say, if somebody is committed, I would say, keep yourself sort of 10% below the breaking point. Don't go to the breaking point, but sort of 10% below. But so with regards to the session length, so the main meditation does happen in the mind. And so there we need to see, so we need to give ourselves enough time so that the mind can actually, sort of calm down through being focused on the virtuous object. So I think with this, it helps very much what we can find in Tibetan Buddhism, initially doing some prayers or doing some mantras which can help to sort of focus the mind, can be more pleasant. And then, and then it's good to include in the meditation some analytical meditation and also some calm abiding meditation. So analytical meditation can be just, for example, just thinking about some things that happened during the day, and then sort of mentally, but then sort of mentally incorporating one's Dharma knowledge into those activities. So making a mental preparation so when I come tomorrow in the same situation, so then that Dharma knowledge is going to be there, and I'm going to react slightly different. Yeah, so, but then we will probably notice, so if we even incorporating all the points, after a certain time, as I said, that's why it's individual. We need to analyze that for ourselves. It will be like just sitting there, but not really. One doesn't really do anything anymore. You might as well do something else, because the mind is not meditating anymore. So it's just sitting there in the 7-point posture and waiting for the remaining 10 minutes to pass. So that means if we find that we have this type of experience, and also the mind, the meditation is also a mental activity. So it will also tire the mind. So the mind can become tired. And so there can be then this experience, we're sitting there, but really sort of mentally there's not much there anymore that we can do in the sense of meditating. So then that shows that that has sort of already gone a little bit past our limit. So we need to adjust our time span so that the meditation stays effective, and that we also finish the meditation while it is still effective, because then we will return to the meditation with a happy mind. We think, yesterday, that worked, that was a nice insight, so we are happy to return to it. But if our last memory of the meditation is just sitting there, waiting for the time to pass urgently, because the knees are aching, everything is painful, then we think, my favorite series, the new episode is starting, I'm sitting here in pain, but so then, the next day we're not so eager. I think we will not be so eager to meditate again. Yeah.
I wonder if you could speak a little bit about cultivating patience. That's something that I've been thinking a lot about since yesterday when you were talking about the difference between patience and repression or suppression. I was thinking in relationship to attachment to the expectations of others or situations. I just think that I need a lot of work on that.
Yeah, I think that we all do that, yeah. So, yeah, yeah. So anyway, I always feel one important aspect to know about the practice of patience is that the practice of patience actually, so strictly speaking, the practice of patience is that we have a peaceful, happy, well-balanced mind, which then, through the methods mental methods, if harm comes, we can protect. Yeah, so through a volitional, conscious mental effort, for example, by directing our mindfulness towards the fact, how the other person is under the control of their own afflictions. So then it does not disturb our inner peace, maybe even increases it. It's possible. Sometimes it seems possible. But so of course, the one prerequisite really is that we have already a happy and peaceful mind. So that but still, to apply the methods of patience will still be helpful because it will lessen our anger, and still, it will make life easier. I think one very effective. So I don't know how familiar you are with the different meditations on patience, but it's quite in great detail explained in the 6th chapter. Yeah. So the 6th chapter by Shantideva is really almost like a source text on patience for all the other. Yeah. And also, so what Dalai Lama mentioned this now in Brussels. No, not Brussels, in Basel, anyway, in Switzerland, just a few months ago. So he said, and I've been teaching this for some time, so I felt quite happy to be confirmed. So he said, it is actually quite effective to apply the methods of patience in retrospect. So that, because we always have, especially also because of expectations and so forth, expectations not being met and other things. So it's not only the fresh anger, the fresh issues, but it's the issues that already happened. And so I think it's very healthy to apply the methods of patience to those past issues. So In a sense, one could almost say, well, if I cannot overcome anger to something that happened already in the past, now how can I be patient with something that's happening right now? And so in this way, so meditating in this way, for example, so using, or the person acted in this way because so they are under the control of their own afflictions, and therefore there's more an object of my compassion, or it was according to my karma. So even being angry about it doesn't change the situation. So we're meditating a lot on the disadvantages of anger, the benefits of patience, and so in this way, trying to reduce, so to get an actual experience of a reduction of anger, to resolve these past issues in our mind. And so that's very healthy because it purifies the mind, and at the same time it becomes a preparation for coming issues, because I think sort of the main issues that we always deal with, they are probably repetitive. I think, One very big aspect in the meditation on patience is to take into consideration the dependent arising, the complete dependent arising. So of course, I always say, so there can be we can have received actual harm from the other person, but it can also be imagined harm. So actual harm is, so if somebody steals money from us, so that is an action, it happened, that's not our imagination. But then also very often our mind seems to project certain things onto the actions of other people. So it sees, interprets, our mind interprets the actions of other people in one very particular way, which is then upsetting to us. Yeah. And so it's always good to question oneself. Well, how to say this? Anyway, in the context of the meditation on patience, so I for myself, I have come to the conclusion so that the way patience is presented, it's sometimes presented in a very absolute way. And so one way we have to understand is, so patience is a mental state. It has nothing to do with verbal or physical action. And so there are also many there are many sort of like levels of situations. So for example, if we are actually able, through our practice of patience, to resolve the issue within us, then there is no need to involve the other person. If that's, if we're really able, be let go, we are able to resolve the issue in our mind, because maybe we remember all the reasons, why we can trust that other person, or if we can remember all the reasons why that what we think was like that is not like that anyway, and we apply all the other reasonings of patience, relating it to our karma, relating it to the afflictions of the other person, all the things. Anyhow, so if we are able to resolve it, one, meditating on love and compassion for the person, so if we are able to resolve it in our mind, and it's really gone, then that's okay. Then there's no need to involve the other person. But I think what often happens, especially as a beginner, we are not quite able to resolve it. So we're not quite able to resolve it, so it stays there. And yeah, I don't. So in that situation, like I personally feel, so for myself, I feel it is more conducive so then to then actually talk about my issue. So I actually prefer to express my problem with the other person or people or whoever it is. So then, there the skill is to do it in a non-aggressive sort of matter-of-fact way. So also there, sort of the limited amount of patience that we have developed in love and compassion, it will be helpful. And the reason why I think that is then more healthy is because we have not resolved it anyway in our mind. So it will be in our mind, and it will continue working because we can't let it go. So it will continue working. So what will happen is we will just become stronger. We will get again more angry even about other things. It's incredibly poisonous. And there is also always there's also always the side of the other person, the other side. And so as surprising as it may come, so the other person probably is not enlightened. So they don't really know, what's going on in our mind, and we don't really know that much what's going on in their mind. So it could be also very beneficial for the other person to express, our problem, because they could be very surprised and say, "Oh, I'm really surprised that you have this problem." And then through the course of the discussion, we could actually realize so that the worry or whatever the issue we had, why we were angry, that was in fact just our mental projection. Yeah. So that, of course, we can't do too often. So I don't know. It needs also a lot of patience from the other persons or people. If they don't have a lot of patience, it becomes difficult. And also from our side, I suppose one can't do it too often. So overall, so we do need to see that it's probably always our mind is really the prime issue. The prime issue. And one issue, and that's very hard to see, but it. Once we have thought a little bit about emptiness, it becomes more clearer to see is that really a lot of the time, so the things that we perceive, they're not really there. At the beginning today, we mentioned that the basis for the Bodhisattva path are the two truth, the conventional illusory truth and the ultimate truth. But so a lot of the time, especially when when our mind is under the control of anger, we can almost say as a guarantee, here I'm not seeing something quite right. Because anger is always based on a distortion. With anger, it's always the issue is always usually the object. And it never. So in the teachings on the source of suffering, it says we can have different misconceptions with regards to the source of suffering. And one misconception can be that we think our suffering has only one cause. So here in this case, then we think, the cause of our suffering is that other person and nothing else. So but actually dependent arising, it really goes all the way around. There are lots and lots of dependent arisings. And so we have to also consider the mind of the other person, their problems, mental afflictions, and so forth. They're under the control of those. We also have to consider our karma. We also have to consider our own projections. And then so with patience, because we said so the one basis for patience is out of the 6 parameters, then the immediate basis for patience is ethics. So the mind that wants to refrain from harming. So if our basic disposition is that we are very willing to inflict harm, then of course it would be very hard to be patient. So there it could be already, there it could be very beneficial, essential to first work on the sort of the aspect of non-harmfulness. Yeah, thank you. So then, guarding the training from degeneration, various types of idle gossip and many great plays, if one becomes involved in any of these, abandon attachment to them. So you should study this text very well, because it gives very good guidelines for how to live one's life. It explains how to sit, walk, and so forth, and also how to think. Here it explains many physical actions that are unsuitable. Yeah, so there are many meaningless and distracting activities which one engages in. For example, the different types of gossip. So gossip is a kind of meaningless, meaningless talking. So talking about, so like what the president is doing, what the president's advisors are doing, like their social life, or like there says, like the different thieves, criminal organizations. So all kinds of worldly topics. It is said that gossip, one characteristic of gossip very often is it has no beginning, middle, or end. So you don't really know where did it start. Is this the middle or the end or the beginning? Is this still the same topic, or are we already talking about something else? So again, conversation can be a limited amount. So like the right amount of conversation can be conducive. So again, we need to look, in our own mind. What do we really find beneficial? So here, these kind of topics. So they produced, of course, thoughts that are associated with those topics, and that's why we like to talk about those topics. But for example, do we really feel better or not? Also, it has been my observation that it's totally, it always seems the same. So if the conversation just goes on long enough, so sooner or later, the conversation will become negative. So it will turn to faults of certain people. So yeah. So I thought, for some time I always thought, so if I have just the right amount of conversation, so then if I go early enough, then I can leave that part out. Because once it comes to the criticizing of a third person that is not there, and inevitably, because the other people are talking about it, so inevitably one's own mind gets caught up in it, so one also wants to say something, and for Dharma people, if two Dharma people that have a true interest in the Dharma, if they talk about things, it's always a little bit different because they always analyze things from the Dharma point of view. I don't think that's necessarily a gossip, or I think that can even be useful because you analyze all the different situations from a Dharma point of view. Or discussing, gossip can be also incredibly harmful because people who like gossip, they just like to talk about things, so their mind is constantly working on trying to find things to say, which are not always totally true. But then they carried on, so it can be quite harmful too. Also to engage in plays and dances, sport and so forth is very distracting and takes up much time. One should therefore avoid becoming involved in any of these activities. However, if one has to become involved for some reason, then one should abandon attachment to them. These actions of body and speech make the mind restless, and at best one does not engage in any of them. But if one cannot avoid becoming involved, then one should abandon attachment to them. I don't know. So like recently, somebody working at an office, so she told me that. So instead of getting involved in during the lunch break into the discussions, so of the other assistants and secretaries and so forth, so she prefers to just go for a quiet walk, so to collect her mind and mentally rest. So she finds that much more refreshing. So then regarding these other actions, so that's, is of course, so it's Shantideva, so it's a very strict line. But so as I mentioned before, so Geshe Doga also, he recommends sometimes people to do sports. Also, one of my other teachers, Geshe Dawa, he once recommended me to go swimming regularly. So swimming, running is really becoming very exhausting. Become like a well-trained monk at first. But Geshe said, it's good to have a worldly activity that sort of makes the mind happy. so of course not like a very, some worldly activities, they are of course very harmful to the mind. It's like on Friday and Saturday evening, so a lot of people engage in those worldly activities, seems like that are very harmful to the mind, so they're very coarse. So, then they run around the streets screaming, and so that's not what is meant. But sort of so general, like sports, or there can be different things, hobbies, walking. So I think there's great wisdom in that advice. So to have some worldly activity, some more or less harmless worldly activity that we like doing, that gives at least some temporary pleasure. That's very skillful, I think. Yeah, so then I think that's more for ordained practitioners. Meaningless digging, cutting of grass, and drawing in dirt. If one does these, upon remembering the trainings of the Tathagata, because of fear, abandon them immediately. We can think that meaningless digging and so forth, so it harms the insects and animals in the earth and in the soil. So the advice of the Buddha, so a lot of the advice of the Buddha is about also protecting life, so different ways of abandoning harming sentient beings. So sometimes we can find an attitude if an insect is found in the flat, in one's room, in the flat, in the house. So it's almost like a matter of course. So it is squashed. But so as a Buddhist, one would not try other avenues such as catching the, maybe it's, if it's, first of all, what is the big deal? If there's a spider up in the corner, it's not really a big deal, maybe. But if it is some kind of big deal, but one can still catch the insect and then throw it out, preferably not if it's winter, but. So there's, it has something to do with an inner attitude. So what is the first thing that comes to our mind? So if it's the first thing that comes to our mind, how can I resolve this without killing the animal? Or is the first thing that comes into our mind, where's my shoe? Or so then the verse 47, when you wish to move or wish to speak, then first analyze your mind and then be smart through steadfastness. When one wishes to engage in any physical action such as walking, sitting, lying or sleeping, or any verbal action, then initially one should analyze one's mind with regards to whether one is able to accomplish the action or not. So that we talked about this already before. If one finds that one can do the action, then before engaging in it, one should be smart by analyzing whether one's mind is under the control of the afflictions or not. The verse 48. When one's mind wants to be attached, or when it wants to be angry, do not move and do not speak, abide like a tree. So that's so similar to what we mentioned before. When having mental excitement with being mocking, when one has pride or conceit, or thinks about criticizing, withdrawing support or being deceptive, when one is ready to praise oneself and belittle others, is offensive or argumentative, at these times one should remain like a piece of wood. So it's the same. Yes, when one, so there this situation is mentioned. So mocking others. I don't think that. I don't think there's anything wrong in telling a joke. So laughing is very good. So also to preserve, to have a sense of humor, that's really good. So usually if one has mental happiness, then one has also a good sense of humor, I think. But if we sort of get excited and mocking anyway is a negative. Also being sarcastic. So that's more harmful. So when the thought in the mind is wanting to be harmful. It can be very good in one's mind to really analyze, why do I say the things that I do? Sometimes they may seem funny to me, but not funny to the other person. So there are different issues mentioned. So also praising oneself and belittling others. So I think that's a very, very common. And it almost seems like it's in the human nature. Not that I'm saying it, just saying it seems sometimes like that. And no, it is not, of course not. But it comes through the self-cherishing. So the self-cherishing finds it unbearable if for example, if other people are praised or if other people have qualities. So when we find that we get ready to belittle others and praise ourselves, then it's better to be like a piece of wood. Also when the mind wants to be attached or when it wants to be angry, do not move or speak and abide like a tree. So it's really like that. We can say, the mind wants to be attached. So it's not just the attachment, but it's the attachment to the attachment. And then below the attachment to the attachment is the attachment, there is the self-cherishing, there is the ignorance. The same with anger. When wishing for gain, praise and fame, on page 50, wishing for servants and entourage, if one's mind wishes for admiration, as these times remain like a piece of wood. So these are, of course, all great points, wishing for gain. So the wish for gain, material gain, is almost one of the major motivators to get up in the morning for many people. But then also to wish praise, wishing for praise. So it's very funny, isn't it? So if we are praised, immediately it makes us feel better. It's almost irrelevant who praises us and why. So immediately when we are praised, it's almost, oh. And it's the same with criticism. It doesn't matter who criticizes us and why, whether it's true or not. But if we are criticized, then immediately we feel bad. But really, so the criticism and the praise, they don't really change us as a person. So it makes us feel better or worse, but it doesn't really, so it can't really make us change as a person. So we like to be praised, but we have to look at, what is the actual substance of the praise. So just because we are praised, does it make us a better person than before? Or just because we are criticized, does it make us a worse person than before? I think that's also very relevant, because very often of course we get angry at the person that criticizes us. We also get angry at a person only because we think that person doesn't like us. So we don't even know, but just because of something, we think that person doesn't like us. So maybe that person twitched their nose when they were looking at us, or they pulled up the eyebrows. Maybe they were just itching here and they just pulled up their eyebrows to alleviate the itching. But anyway, so because they just looked at us when they were pulling up the eyebrows, so we think, they don't like us. And immediately it generates anger. And I think there's a constant, like a constant worry going on, about being liked, about being disliked, what one has to do to be liked, what one did to perhaps be disliked, and so forth. I think it could be that it occupies a great deal, like a big part of our mind, and it creates a lot of worry. And it's not always just in relation to people that are close to us, but I think it's very often also to people that we don't even know. We do say the words, I don't care what the other person thinks, But I wonder, who really does not care what the other person thinks? But it can be I think it can be very useful to us to contemplate, well, regardless of what the other person thinks of us or not, whatever they think or don't think, but it's not going to change us as a person. So just because we are able to convey a certain impression, that doesn't mean that we became that person. So the basis for the label person are still our aggregates. So whatever is there in our mind, so all the qualities and all the faults, so that is the label for the person Fedor. So whatever the other person may think, that is not the basis for the label Fedor. So if we think this really true, so another person not liking us, it doesn't really harm us. So, and because there is no harm, then there is no need to be angry. They're similar with criticism. So if another person criticizes us, if the criticism is true, we probably still get angry. But really, so if we're really honest, that anger, so it's just our self-cherishing. Because if the criticism is true, what are we going to say? So very often, or not very often, because people are usually quite nice to me anyway, but occasionally I get comments regarding some of my translations, which I find quite useful. Sometimes I wish I would get more, but so either, of course, initially one does get sort of angry. So think, what does that person think, criticizing my translation? So who do they think they are? But my translation, how do they dare? But then, so if you get down to it, so either it is a correct comment, and then so it only helps to improve the translation. So the benefit for others is greater, because in the end, what I want is as good a translation as possible. So for others. So if that comment helped in some tiny way, then that's okay. That's good. So if it is not an accurate comment, so the fault that the person perceived is actually not there, then. Then there's not really, the only harm that has been done is to my self-cherishing. But there's not really any harm, because, the translation doesn't get worse just because a person says it has such and such a fault. So, because there's no harm, then also there's no need to be angry. It just becomes sometimes a little bit tiring, because you always have to go back and research again whether that's correct or not, because I can't remember why I translated it like that 10 years ago or 5 years ago. But otherwise, so that's what I think. So if the criticism is correct, so it can be only beneficial. At least we can't really get angry about accurate criticism. And if the criticism is incorrect, then there is no harm. So I think this type of meditation is very useful, because it helps us to become more, internally more independent human beings, so more self-sufficient human beings. Because otherwise, if we always take into consideration in our self-definition if you always take into consideration what other people think or may not think, so that's really very difficult. So it creates, or what other people say, so it creates a lot of stress and worry too. So here at in the last paragraph of page 50, Geshe-la mentions two situations. One, the mind has not fallen under the control of the afflictions in the first place. And secondly, the mind has fallen under the control of the object and has to be recalled. The first is called refraining. The second one is referred to as guarding the mind. It means to recall the mind from the afflictions with introspection after it has fallen under the control of the afflictions. It is the way one guards the mind with introspection. So in the case one, one was able to prevent the mind from falling under the control of the afflictions in the first place. So one doesn't have to recall the mind from the affliction or from the from the mistaken object. But then, so the second, when it talks about guarding the mind with introspection, that's that's more applicable to the situation where the mind has already fallen under the control of the afflictions or has wandered off to a wrong object. So then it is the job of mindfulness to recognize this, and one then has to recall the mind from that object or apply the antidote. Uh, 52. When casting aside the welfare of others and desiring one's selfish aims, and having on page 51, and having a mind wishing to speak, at these times remain like a piece of wood. When being impatient, lazy, or afraid, and likewise when stubbornness, incoherentness, and a partisan attitude arise, at these times remain like a piece of wood. Having thus analyzed the strong afflictions and the mind striving in meaninglessness, the brave person will then guard the mind steadfastly with antidotes. Strong ascertainment and strong faith, stability, respect and politeness, knowing shame and having fear, peaceful and striving to please others. So strong ascertainment. So the Dharma topics, we need to become sure about the Dharma topics. We need to ascertain them for ourselves. So in our normal language usage, faith is almost the opposite of ascertainment or Sometimes one even says, oh, precisely because one cannot investigate it or should not investigate it, so therefore one needs to have faith. But in Buddhism it is different. So in Buddhism, the best type of faith is the faith that is based on ascertaining the object or the philosophy, the philosophic tenet. Then having having a stability, so having a stable altruistic attitude, a stable compassion, stable wisdom. Then also being respectful to others. Politeness. Politeness and also humility. Then knowing shame and having fear, that relates to what this is sort of like specific terms. So that's what we touched upon yesterday. Refraining from a harmful action because we taking ourselves as the reason, or that becomes shame, or refraining from a harmful action because we take others as the reason becomes consideration. Then also generating fear from negativities. So by meditating on the karmic results of our actions. Then being peaceful, so experiencing the peace of having subdued afflictions or having reduced self-cherishing, trying to make others happy. There's so much in our makeup is about making ourselves happy, and so the expectation that others make us happy. And so we can think always of many ways for others to make us happy. And then we get angry if that doesn't happen. And I think it's very important to look in our mind. Sometimes we also engage into, we sort of engage into actions to make the other person happy. So at least it looks like it. Sometimes it's even a little bit exaggerated. But I think it's very important to look in our mind. Do we really have the wish for the other person to be happy? So is that wish really there? Or do we just want to fulfill some self-notion, for example, of a good person, and that's why we carry out these actions? Or some other reason. But what is really in our mind? So is it really, do we really have the wish for the other person to be happy? Is that there? If it is not there, then I think that's, then we need to think, that's an issue that needs to be addressed. That's very serious. Do not be put off by the desires of the childish that strive with each other, and think with affection, they have these minds due to their generation of afflictions. So, like Shantideva, he very often refers to samsaric people as childish. So he refers to us as childish people for a variety of reasons. Because very often, so for example, one gets upset in all three situations. We can get upset because somebody is, of course, criticizes us or is impolite. So we can get upset. That's very. But it also happens that people become upset if they are praised, or like if one makes a joke, or one is polite to them, then the person becomes upset. Sometimes the person becomes upset, if nothing is said. So there's not really, any particular. So that's so it's childish. There also children. They get usually. I guess one sort of general characteristic that is attributed to children is that they get very upset. So they have very strong wishes as a generality, and then they can get very upset if those wishes are not fulfilled. So they're out of the blue. They can get very upset. So they can also stop immediately again. So, how is our mind if our wishes are not met? So then are we not also like a child? So immediately becoming upset. We immediately become upset if our wishes are fulfilled. We immediately not fulfilled. We immediately are happy, if even small wishes are fulfilled. Similarly, you praise a child, regardless of whether the praise is true or not, so the child will feel good. They think, oh, now I have done really something good. So if you criticize the child, regardless of whether it is true criticism or not, so they think they're going to feel really bad. So it's also, it's the same for us, I suppose. So here anyway, I have not much experience with children, so probably it's quite different. I'm just, because this term, maybe children also have wisdom, so they may not express it, but if they are criticized for something they didn't do, then of course they also know that. So they're also quite perceptive in that way. But anyway, so just trying to, so why are worldly people regarded as childish? Is it like childish? Yeah. It's like fighting over the resources of the planet. Who gets the most? It's like in the sandbox. Actually, there would be enough for everybody, but everybody thinks, I'm not getting enough, and I need to accumulate as much as possible. So this verse is very useful advice. Geshe-la says, it often happens that because one helps one person, another person becomes angry. So that's true. If we help a person that another person regards as enemy, we become also the enemy of that person. But what can be even more confounding is if we help a person and that person becomes angry at us. So that can also happen. They may say, oh, that was my situation, my problem. What are you interfering in my problem? So all at once we became their problem too. So that's why the Shantideva he make in the 8th chapter he makes this remark, actually trying to please, trying to please sentient beings, with their diverse wishes and likes and dislikes, that is, it doesn't lead anywhere. So, better don't try. And just go, that's of course for us not immediately applicable, but so just go to the forest and meditate. Objects without negativities are for self and sentient beings. Without self, always protect this mind like an emanation. So negativities can be divided into natural negativities and accepted negativities. So like anger is a natural negativity, or stealing, lying, etc. The theory behind it is that even if it is done with a good motivation, there is some tiny non-virtue that one can't avoid. But then, so bodhisattvas occasionally engage into these actions for the purpose of others, and then so out of great compassion, they accept that non-virtue for the benefit of others. And in that, accepted negativity would be like different vows. Like when one takes 8 Mahayana precepts, then one of the vows is not to eat in the afternoon. So that's an accepted negativity. So just not eating in the afternoon is of course not just eating in the afternoon is not a negativity, but so we can take the vow for those 24 hours, and then it becomes a negativity. So our practices and actions should be free from both types of negativities. And then this is done by combining these virtuous practices with the wisdom realizing emptiness and viewing them as empty of true existence like an illusion. In this way, by perceiving them as empty of inherent existence like an emanation, one protects one's mind from pride and mental elaborations. Having repeatedly contemplated one's attainment of supreme leisure over a long time, hold on to that mind as immovable as a Mount Meru. So the contemplation on the what is referred to as the precious human rebirth, that is very, very important. So first the identification of the precious human rebirth, then meditating on its great use, and also meditating on the difficulty of attaining a precious human rebirth. Yeah, so it's very good to in general, to meditate on on the precious human rebirth. Of course, one realizes in this way that one's life has meaning, is valuable, that one's body has meaning and is valuable. And one also fully realizes the depth of that meaning. And also one realizes how rare it is. And so one decides to put it to good use. So that, yeah. Then, how to train in the morality of accumulating virtuous dharmas. Abandoning attachment to the body, which is the cause not to train in virtue. So you may not greatly like those verses. Vultures, due to their attachment for flesh, push and pull it back and forth among them. If you do not have any dislike, then why do you cherish it now? So this has to do with the impurity of the human body. And so the meditation on the impurity of the human body is said to be one of the best antidotes to attachment. So one can meditate on the impurity of one's own body or the impurity of the body of the other person. Having claimed the body as mine, why do you regard the mind? Why do you guard the mind? Since both of you are distinct, what is it doing for you? So he's sort of saying, since the attachment to the body generates so many problems, it's almost pointless to engage into the practice of guarding the mind. So that's of course not to be taken literally, it's just an argument. Since body and mind are two mutually distinct individual phenomena that do not have a lasting relationship, to what end do you claim it as mine? Ultimately, body and mind will separate. The body will abandon you, and you will leave the body behind. Hence, what is the purpose in holding onto the body as mine? So we think of like our body as mine, and so we hold it to be quite pure. And then meditating on the impurity of the body, so we realize that it is not like that, that it is not as pure as we thought. And so that is a good antidote against attachment. And also we hold onto the body as mine, and not just as mine, but as intrinsically mine. So it's good to remind ourselves that sooner or later we are going to have to let go of our body. So it's not a question of if, but only of the question of when. The deluded mind, why do you not grasp at the clean form of wood? This machine that is an accumulation of filth, these bones, to guard this, how is it appropriate? And so the argument is that wood is more clean than the body. Yeah, you're really going to like this. So first, separate with your awareness this sheath of skin. Then also remove the flesh from the grid of bones and place it separately with your wisdom. So it's like dividing it mentally. Then also divide the bones and look until your feet. So look at the whole body. Analyze and ask yourself, where is the essence in this? If even when looking with effort, you cannot find any essence in this, then why do you persist in guarding this body with attachment? You are unable to eat filth, as well as unable to drink blood, and unable to suck innards. What is the body doing for you? In short, it is suitable to be guarded as food for foxes and vultures. This human body is only to be used, so that is going on from before, as food for foxes and vultures. This body is only to be used. So it's only to be used for virtue. So that's the thing. We should view this body as not as a means in itself, but as a vehicle, as something to be used to attain liberation and enlightenment. So that because we have the human body, we have unbelievable possibilities. When we eat food, we try to motivate ourselves to not eat the food out of attachment, and not to have a pleasant or strong or good-looking body, but only as nourishment for the body in order to be able to practice the Dharma. So Shantideva says, if we don't do that, since we from our side, we are doing a lot for the body, we feed it 2 to 3 times a day. To be able to feed it, we have to go to work. So then we dress it. Again, to be able to dress it, we need money, so that also we need to go to work. Then we need to protect it from the elements, so to give it shelter. Again, to afford that, we need to go to work. That's all. That's all only because we have a human body, this human body. So a lot of our efforts are gone into upkeeping and our human body, day after day. So what do we get out of it in return? So Shantideva says, if we don't put this human body to use for Dharma practice, then it will be like having a very lazy servant. It's like, so you have this live-in servant, you provide a very nice room, 3 meals a day, high-def TV, CD surround system, very good wage. Then on top of that, you cook for the servant. So you go shopping, you do the cooking, you clean the room. So the servant is all the time lying on the bed. And so Shantideva says, if we don't, you massage the legs of the servant and their shoulders, the shoulders which have not been working. And so Shantideva says, if we don't use our human body for Dharma practice, then it will be exactly like that. Even if you protect it, the Lord of Death, without any mercy, will give it away and give it to the birds and dogs. At that time, what can you do? So there's not much one can do. Since you would not give cloth and so forth to servants, so that's what I just said, that cannot be ordered around, if this body leaves you despite your care, why do you build up your flesh to make it firm? After giving the body its wage, put it to work for your purpose. Without any return, do not offer anything, do not offer everything to it. Regard the body as a boat, merely for coming and going. Transform it into a wish-fulfilling body to accomplish the welfare of sentient beings. So then I think, we can then now translate this into practice. Well, not really translate this into practice, I guess. So now then we can have a tea and a rest, so that the body receives nourishment and rest, to be a boat with which we can go to enlightenment. So maybe 25 minutes. So then there is the next outline. Thus, those that have, that's okay, it's okay. Yeah, thank you. Thus, those that have independence should always wear a smile, clear away wrinkles and frowns, and be migrators, friends, and be honest. So having mental independence so that one can display a smile, even if inside one doesn't necessarily feel so happy. Do not throw beds and so forth around noisily without consideration. So also to the neighbors or the people below, also do not open the door roughly, always delight in being quiet. Waterfowl, cats and thieves go quietly and are inconspicuous, thus achieving their goals. The able ones always act in such a way. Yeah, so the Bodhisattvas, they always practice their disciplines in a pure and gentle manner. Skillful in inducing others, and through placing the true beneficial words respectful on the crown, become the student of all. Yeah, so the main method is to be kind and gentle. But so the true meaning of being skillful is to act always according to the situation. So trying to think of what is the best way of action, what is the way of action, the course of action that is best for the other person. So then occasionally it also happens that we get advice or even uninvited advice from somebody else. So then if that advice is beneficial, then it has helped us, and so we should take it to heart and remember repeatedly any virtuous Dharma advice given. So we should take it to heart, because even if it is uninvited advice, if it helps us to improve our mind, then it has brought us one tiny step closer to enlightenment. Everything that is said well should be commented on as virtue. When seeing somebody being meritorious, generate joy through praise. So we should always praise others, reinforce their virtuous practice. In general, because otherwise we will notice our self-cherishing always wants to disparage the virtuous actions of others, belittle them, and sort of proclaim one's own merits as the greater ones. So it's always good to commend the other person if they do something positive, generate joy in their mind through praising them. Then also, so if we generate joy in their mind about their action, it increases their virtue. If we generate disappointment or regret regarding their positive action in their mind, we actually destroy their virtue and merit. So that can come about through pride. If somebody tells us of something, they're excited, they're happy, so they did something positive, but then out of our pride, we sort of say, "Oh, that was nothing," or sort of this kind of things. Such and such did much greater actions. So it sort of does something to the mind of the other person. So immediately they feel less good about what they did, and so it interferes with their merit. It's also for oneself. It's always good to rejoice in the virtuous actions of others, because that also accumulates merits. Comment on qualities secretly. When qualities are mentioned, agree. If one's qualities are mentioned, check whether there are qualities. So if there's a danger that our praising the qualities of others would be perceived as flattery, then we praise their qualities in secret. And also when the qualities of others are mentioned, we agree. So we don't try to disparage those qualities. If one's own qualities are mentioned, then first check whether there are actually any qualities to And then if one finds that the other person is right and that one has these qualities, then one can rejoice if, because all efforts are to bring joy, they are rare even for a prize. Thus, through the virtue of working for others, enjoy the bliss of happiness. All one's actions should be done for the purpose of making sentient beings happy. So really, the actions that are done to bring about joy in others, so they are very rare, even for a prize. Thus, but if we really generate this attitude that we discussed before, so if we really have the true wish in our mind or in our heart for the other person to be happy, and if that wish is stable, then we will experience mental happiness. So we can enjoy this then. There's nothing above one in this life, and also on the other side will be greater happiness. Faults cause unhappiness and suffering, and also on the other side will be great suffering. Through working for the happiness of others, oneself will also be happy. When speaking, it should be agreeable and coherent, clear and pleasant, without attachment or anger. One should speak gently and softly. When looking at a sentient being, say or think, in dependence on this very sentient being, I will become a Buddha, and look at it honestly and lovingly. So because the happiness of other sentient beings depends on the attainment of enlightenment depends on other sentient beings. So we cannot become enlightened if we want to become enlightened for our own purpose. And so also as Shantideva said, so therefore, my enlightenment, we can think my enlightenment depends on this other person. So it is a dependent arising in relative existence to that other person. Arising continually through a clear wish and merely arising through the antidote in relation to the fields of qualities, benefit and suffering. So in relation to the fields of qualities, benefit and suffering arises a great virtue. This verse deals with how to cultivate strong virtuous actions. First, one should engage into virtuous actions in a continual manner, not just occasionally. Even a small virtuous action becomes very strong through repetition. It also works in the reverse, of course. Strong virtuous motivation also makes the virtuous action stronger. So even if the action is small, but the virtuous motivation is very strong, it becomes a very powerful karma. Positive. To be a virtuous action, it should also become an antidote against its opposing mental affliction. If it is asked with regards to which objects, to which field, to which objects the virtuous and non-virtuous actions become powerful, so karma can also be powerful relative to the object. Karma can be powerful relative to the motivation, and karma can be powerful relative to the object. So there's the field of qualities, that's the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. There's the field of benefit, the parents. And then there's the field of suffering. So they're the poor, the unempowered, the sick and weak, and so forth. So if we create karma, either positive or negative, in relation to any of those three fields, then the karma is strong through the force of the object. Having become proficient and faithful, I will continuously engage in the actions of Bodhisattvas. In all actions, I will not depend on anyone. So we should always be independent in our actions, not rely on other people to do our job as much as possible. The perfections of giving and so forth, increase them one after the other. Do not abandon the big for the small. Mainly think towards the purpose of others. So, as we said before, so one should increase the different perfections one after the other. So we shouldn't abandon the big for the small. So that happens also, that we abandon some big purpose for a small purpose. So mainly always have the purpose of others in mind. Sometimes we also sacrifice long-term happiness for short-term happiness. So then there's the next outline. Training in the morality of accomplishing the welfare of sentient beings. On page 80. Having understood it thus, they abide, striving continuously for the welfare of others. Those with compassion have the long view and allow what has to be stopped. So for those with great compassion, they have their long view, and for them it is allowed to engage into the 7 negative actions of body and speech for the purpose of others. So then on page 82, share with those fallen into the wrong direction, those without protection and those practicing austerities. Eat only in a measured fashion and offer everything apart from the 3 robes. Do not teach the Dharma to the disrespectful, not to those who, while healthy, wear headbands, umbrellas, sticks, carry weapons, or cover their heads. To those holding the lesser to be great and profound. To a woman without a husband, hold equal respect for the lesser and supreme Dharma and practice it all. Do not bring those that are a vessel for the extensive Dharma to the lesser Dharma. So do not induce those that have potential for the Mahayana to the Hinayana. Do not give up the training. Do not mislead with Sutra and Tantra. If one leaves tooth, wood, so that's the toothbrush of the time, and saliva, then they should be covered. It is also inferior to urinate and so forth on water and ground commonly used. So that's maybe, at that time, it was more sort of like a rural living situation very often. So do not eat with your with your full mouth, noisily, or with an open mouth. Do not sit with the legs stretched out, and do not rub your hands together. So now you know. when riding or sitting on a mattress or place, do not be together with another woman. So that's it for monks. Abandon anything that causes worldly beings to lose faith, that seen and that to inquire about. Also here, so for lay bodhisattvas who have a wife, it is not regarded as proper for a man then to abandon his wife and go around with another woman. Such behavior could cause a loss of faith in the mind of others. Do not point with a finger, but respectful with your full right hand, show the way to, is that the 92? Yes. Do not move your hand excessively, but only just enough with some words. Snap your fingers and so forth, otherwise it becomes unrestrained. So for example, if we are asked for direction, so how do we point in the right direction? So also this we can do respectfully, but also without being getting excessively involved. So being being restrained and also being polite without being over effusive, I think is the word. And also as explained before, smiling at the person, but not getting emotionally involved, seeing them as a relative from past or friend from past lives. Sleep like the protector when he passed into parinirvana in a desired direction. Make sure from the start with introspection about the thought of getting up quickly. So with regards to sleeping, it is advised to sleep in the same position as the perfect Tathagata Shakyamuni Buddha when he passed into parinirvana. Also lying on the right side with the right hand under one's head and the left hand on one's thigh. And before going to sleep, one can make a virtuous determination not to lose the virtuous practices generated and carry them with one into sleep and into the morning when one awakes. One can then turn sleeping into a virtuous practice. In this way, it becomes the practice of sleep yoga for beginners. Then presenting other features to make the training perfect. Out of the actions of bodhisattvas that are said to be immeasurable, definitely act in accordance with what you can in the actions of training the mind. So we can practice according to our ability. And it's good not to try to aim too high, but to practice in accordance with one's ability. Recite the Sutra of the Three Heaps. So that's the Sutra of the 35 Buddhas 3 times in the morning and in the evening. So Lama Soba Rinpoche says if we do this, recite the Sutra 3 times in the evening, so there is no doubt, we don't need to worry. So then all the karma that has been accumulated during the day is purified and one can sleep well. Pacify the remainder of downfalls in dependence on conquerors and bodhisattvas. So one can recite also other confession prayers, such as the general confession. Whatever you do on whatever occasion, make it as taught an occasion for the trainings with effort. Yeah, so that's probably also very crucial advice, so that wherever we go, that we try to practice the Dharma in whatever situation. There's nothing the children of the conquerors do not practice. For those proficient that abide in that manner, there's nothing that does not become meritorious. Regardless of whether it is directly or indirectly, do nothing but work for the purpose of sentient beings. Solely for the purpose of sentient beings, I dedicate all to enlightenment. May I never, even at the cost of my life, give up my virtuous friends, those proficient in the meaning of the Mahayana, and those keeping supreme disciplines of bodhisattvas. Emulate the biography of Peljung in the training of relying on the Guru. Understand this and other advice by the Buddhas through reading the sutras. So it's very good to read the different biographies of recognized yogis and lamas, and then emulate their lifestyle, so taking it as an inspiration, so also how they rely on their reliance on the teacher. From the sutras comes perception of the trainings. Therefore, read the sutras. First, read the sutra of the essence of space. So you can do this next week. Then, those who, because of what one practices continuously, is shown in it more extensively, read also the compendium of trainings again and again. So the compendium of trainings is another text by Shantideva, where he explains the Bodhisattva practices more extensively, and as in the Bodhisattva Chayavatara, and where he also relates it more clearly to the direct quotations of the Buddha. Further, read the compendium of sutras that summarizes. Put also effort into reading the one composed by Nagarjuna. Here Shantideva says that further one should read his compendium of sutras, and also there's also a compendium of sutras by Nagarjuna that should be read. That which has not been prohibited should be practiced to protect the mind of worldly beings. Practice correctly upon seeing the trainings. Investigate repeatedly during actions of body and mind. Merely this, in brief, is the definition of introspection. They all have to be practiced with the body. What is accomplished by only talking about it? Is the sick person cured merely by studying medicine? So we have to put the Dharma into practice. So I think there's quite a lot of useful advice in this chapter. So the Dharma that we know so we should try to put at least some of it into practice. So without putting ourselves too much under stress. So we can also put we can also put ourselves very much under pressure to practice the Dharma. So that's maybe also not necessary generally. But to not practice the Dharma at all, so that would be a great loss. And also, it is like having a great medicine. It's like being on the one hand being sick, then on the other, then simultaneously having received a very good medicine, but then not taking that medicine. So we tell everybody that we got this incredible medicine from the doctor. So it has this shiny package, with the hologram and everything, and it was terribly expensive. And so we tell everybody about the virtues of this medicine. We are so happy that we have this medicine. We keep it, in the upper drawer, but we never take it. So we completely, in all the excitement, we completely forget to take the medicine, and then die of the sickness. So, so if you don't practice the Dharma that we know, so if you don't put that into use, so it will be like that. So, and because Dharma practices are so vast, so as it was said there, so there's no need to try to emulate the great Bodhisattvas in every detail, but just to look at some aspects of their life and trying to include these which we feel suitable and agreeable into our own lives. And because our lives and minds are so busy anyway, so to have some Dharma that we incorporate, that's incredibly beneficial. And also to engage into some formal practice, such as reciting the 35 Buddhas every evening 3 times. So the benefits that are mentioned, so great benefits are mentioned. So as we said before, so we do experience difficulties to incorporate the Dharma in our mind. And so the purification, so karma, unpurified karma is one major issue. So to purify karma, to accumulate merits through making offerings, helping in the center, reading sutras, whatever, reciting mantras, meditating on love and compassion. And it is also good to not think, the Dharma per se. I think it's also good to think, just because it is Dharma, it does not mean that it is the antidote to our problems. So that's also good to know. Because everybody is different, and even in one life, we go through different phases. So, like one of my teachers, Geshe Lama Kunchok, so he advised that initially we need more to be built up, so it is good to meditate on the precious human rebirth. So meditating on the precious human rebirth, one develops a positive self-image, awareness of one's potential. So Geshe also said, so you mentally, so internally you go higher and higher. So then if you get too high, so then you have to bring yourself down by meditating on the sufferings. For somebody that is already down, so then, to meditate extensively on the sufferings, so that may not be the best course of action. So that's why we have to be also wise in the application of our meditations and practices. So to be flexible there and to see there's a whole lot of practices, and we only get the benefit of the Dharma that we do practice. So even if it is not the highest practice that we do, if it is at least it is some practice. And in the end, high or low, the karmic benefits that are always mentioned are incredible, and whether high or low, so if it's beneficial for one's mind, then it is suitable. So I'm sometimes wondering for myself, so if I apply this to myself, so how far down would I have to go? So, so think, down, at the very beginning of the Dharma practice, there's this practice of sweeping the room. I always think, well, if I'm really honest, so that's what I'm comfortable with. So the sweeping of the room, that I seem to be able to do. So everything else that comes after, it seems to be involving a lot of effort. So for some time I did the sweeping of the room very diligently. I'm not sure. So then also, for example, for some, to understand the principle of the antidote, that is very important, I think. So as we mentioned at the beginning, so the power of the mind focusing on a positive object as the antidote. And so here also we have to be selective. If we are already, if you're already an anxious person, it may not be the best to meditate on impermanence at the start. Or maybe, it's individual, so one can check. If there's a lot of discursive thought and random thinking, so then meditations on the clear nature of the mind, so the more expansive types of meditations, where we widen out our mind and meditate on the spacious nature, empty nature of everything. So then they're more conducive. So we do this for some time. So that's what I mean. So we need to bring an element of skillfulness into our practice. So I don't know. Would you have some questions? Yes?
Before you mentioned that, or it was in the text saying that you shouldn't do anything, you shouldn't engage in any action or do anything to basically shake someone's faith, or to should have marked it. Does that encompass like all faiths? I mean, when he was writing, was that something where if I mean, not like I'm going to go out and proselytize anyone, but just having a discussion where if, I don't know, discussing the teachings with someone and where their faith is different than yours or something like that. I guess where is that line drawn in this text?
Well, no, this one is more in the context of the Buddhist context. Yeah. I mean, generally as a Buddhist, we don't try to transform other people into Buddhists. I don't know, in Munich, I had this situation because then I always, in the evening after the program, I go home by train, so I have to wait at the station, and then I noticed there was one young black person, so always there at the same time, and he started to approach me, and so I asked questions, which religion are you, and because he seemed to get off his whatever he did, apprenticeship or whatever, at the same time. So not every week, but from time to time, I would meet him, and I think he probably, it's not so clear. People they're sometimes not so clear, but anyway, then he asked me about Buddhism, and but then of course one big question is always, well, what God do Buddhists believe in? And I always think, well, it's one of the distinguishing. They never like it, of course, but what can I do? So I always say, Buddhists don't believe in a God. It's like, no God. And so at that time it didn't say much. Just and but then at one of the other visits, he also, at that time there was some discussion in Germany going on about immigration and all of that. So anyway, so I think he felt a little bit encouraged. So anyway, it seems he was a Muslim, or maybe he remembered that he was a Muslim. I have no idea. So I met him again, and he again asked some questions, and so do you believe in love? Yes, of course. But do you believe in God? No. And no God. So then how can everything be created? And well, in Buddhism we believe in karma. Karma, what's that? But in his mind he couldn't quite let go. No God. That was like. So it was really upset. It became upsetting to him. He started to shake his head, and and he actually became a little bit upset that evening. And then I thought in my mind, well, the next time he's going to ask me, about my religion, I'm just going to say, don't ask me. Don't engage me into a talk about religion, if you don't want to know about other religions, or have a hard time accepting those other religions. So I think, if somebody asks us, it's their business. We're not trying to convince them, they just want to know about our religion. So I didn't approach him and wanted to convey him I didn't want to convey to him that my viewpoint was better. So even though I would think that, I do think that, but he sort of gave the impression that he wanted to know. So we wouldn't do any particular action purposely to jeopardize the faith of others. And so I think it's probably also wise then not to engage into talks about religion. It's like talking about politics. Nothing good can come of it. Especially because most religions, they are faith-based. So it's a creationist, single God So there's not much leeway for other views usually. So it's better not to talk about it. But so as the Dalai Lama always says, so if we can encourage somebody, so if his interpretation of Christianity or his Buddhist views then encourage a Christian to be a better Christian, then he feels happy about that. But it's probably for Christians and Muslims, so single creationist religions, it's very difficult, even if they try to be open. But I think in the end, in their mind, it's not possible to be open, because there's no possibility for anything else. So in Buddhism, we believe in cause and effect, so it's more relaxed. Because for us, if somebody practices generosity, they will get a good karmic result. So whether they're Christian or non-religion or Buddhist. But for them, for somebody that is sort of single faith, single God, so creation God-based religions, then one big aspect is always you have to believe in that. So regardless how good a person you are, if you don't believe in that, it's a very big fault. It's a big drama. So even if there is an appearance of openness or wanting to know, but in the end I think for those types of believers it's really not really possible to be open. It goes against the basic framework. Also because they do not know it's faith-based. So faith-based automatically encourages fanaticism. So you have to be fanatic, because it's the one book which is proclaiming the absolute truth. So you just have to believe it, no matter how much doubt you have or how incredible it sounds. So you have to believe it. So it's automatically fanatic. In the mind, you have to be fanatic about it. You can only, there's no room for logic or analysis. So then that type of mind, again, it cannot be open to other views. It's not possible because it's too threatening. So already, also for that reason, it's not so useful to engage into this kind of discussions as a generality. No, I think anyway, that's me. So in Buddhism, because we encourage reasoning and personal responsibility, and also the forming of personal views, and we say the best type of faith is the faith that is arises from analysis. So it's very different for us. So we can be quite open, but yeah.
On this line, I was talking to my brother last night, and I was talking about karma and rebirth and things like that. That's what are some of the main things of what I've learned studying the Dharma. And then he was saying, well, he's like, well, it's a religion. I'm like, well, it's so much of it is psychology, and part of it, of course, is religious aspects of it. And he was saying that, well, you can't prove rebirth and you can't prove karma. And I'm like, well, if you develop single pointed concentration and you realize emptiness and you are clairvoyant and you can see your past lives and stuff like that. And then he's saying, well, do you know anyone who's done that? And I'm like, well, I know people who know people. So he's like, well, then that's faith, and so I was just not wrestling, but just I don't know, it was just his way, I don't know, I was just not struggling, but it was just an interesting way of throwing faith back at me in a making it kind of a very religious, esoteric kind of thing, as opposed to the way we study the Dharma, and it's a very complete system, and you can really use your mind to work it all out. But that whole realizing emptiness is such a incredible achievement that could take immeasurable eons, right?
No, I think that bodhicitta might take that long. The emptiness maybe not. But so I mean, yeah. So your brother is of course correct. So if we believe also karma exists because we know people who know people, that's of course it's like hearsay. So we trust those people who know people, but it doesn't become a proof. It doesn't become a proof. In fact, it wouldn't even become a proof if we know people. Because anybody can say they have clairvoyance, but we would never know whether it's really true. Yes. But also maybe, just like one student or one acquaintance of mine. So she always had this thing. She said, "Well, if it can be proven." Which in Buddhism they always say, karma can be proven, past and future lives can be proven. So she always said, well, if it can be proven, you should be able to state a proof to me right now that convinces me. So if you cannot do this, then it cannot be proven. So, I don't know, but anyway, so that was always her argument. But it's not really like that, because no one can state to her a valid reason. So in the logical context, there is that concept of a valid reason. And one could state to her a valid reason, but the mind has to be ready. It takes a lot of time to understand the valid reason. Like in the context of emptiness, we can say, so the person lacks inherent existence because it is a dependent arising. The reason is valid, but do we understand it immediately? No. So it takes a lot of time to understand the reason. It takes a lot of time to actually investigate, so to convince ourselves that it is a valid reason. It takes a lot of time or merit to see that it is a valid reason that proves that things are empty of inherent existence. So one thing that you could say to your brother, so there are valid reasons, but like for example, there's one Tibetan Lama, after the Chinese occupation, so he put together this small booklet that's called The Necklace of Good Fortune, that has been translated into English. And in there he summarized all the proofs, also some of the major proofs given in the treatises for the existence of karma and for the existence of past and future lives. So a necklace of good fortune. Sort of like a thin book. It got published by the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives many years ago. So there are proofs, but just because it is a proof doesn't mean that we immediately understand it. But that's one thing. And then, So initially, of course, we generate, we have that faith that derives merely from hearing. Yeah. So it's not said that faith is not good. It's just the opposite, the opposed. It's just in other religions or in other views, it says it's almost like faith excludes reasoning. The way faith is used in our language, German, English, because the culture is it's influenced similarly. It's almost like either you can analyze it, or you have to have faith. So it's almost like they exclude each other. And so that's what Buddhism says, that's not like that. So the better type of faith, everything can be analyzed. So in fact, everything should be analyzed. But, and so the faith that derives from analysis, so when we have actually convinced ourselves that, that the thesis is correct, so that type of faith is, more strong. So analysis is encouraged. Yeah. But then, so that's. And then also some analysis, I think a lot of analysis is, and also then reasons for our faith, they are personal. So if we, through our own experience, like in the context of today, so if we apply this way of meditating, the focus on the positive object, so if we apply this and we see the benefit, so then we generate faith. But then if we tell, if we then say this to another person, oh, we have had this benefit. For them, they may also generate faith, but it doesn't really become a valid reason for them because they don't really have a direct access or cognition of our experience, but we have direct cognition of our experience. So for us, our experience can become a valid reason. So then maybe similar to yesterday, we can briefly again sit in the meditation posture. And so again for some time meditate on a sense of rejoicing. So having gone through this very valuable a text by Shantideva, And so then we can dedicate the merits to the welfare of all sentient beings, similar to yesterday. Thank you very much. So then, thank you very much for your participation, and yeah.